Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we are unpacking the power pyramid of Shaitan, the invisible empire ruled by Iblis. We're looking at a deeply complex, highly structured, and entirely unseen hierarchy that's derived directly from a vast array of theological, historical, and esoteric sources. So we aren't just talking about local folklore today. We are examining a rigorous, ancient organizational chart of spiritual sabotage exactly as it's laid out in these texts.
Now, you might be wondering, what does the architecture of this ultimate invisible empire actually look like? Well, to understand this, we can't just think of it as random supernatural events or spooky stories. The texts present a very deliberate, top-down structure. We're talking about an empire complete with a command center, elite generals, mundane foot soldiers, and even earthly contractors, all working perfectly in tandem. The chronological foundation for this entire empire begins long before humanity even stepped onto the scene. According to the foundational Islamic texts we're reviewing, the Earth was initially ruled by a race known as the Jinn. They ruled for an era, but over time, their ambition led to severe corruption and bloodshed. This actually triggered an angelic intervention that drove them to the far corners of the Earth. But there was one being among them named Azazel, who had ascended to live in the highest levels alongside angels. When a new entity, Adam, was created, Azazel succumbed to immense pride. His refusal to bow turned his pride into pure arrogance, causing his fall and his transformation into Iblis. This specific tragedy is the absolute bedrock of the invisible empire.
That brings us to Section 1, the Command Center, also known as the Throne upon Water.
So, where exactly does an unseen emperor rule from? Let's look at how this operates as a functional military command. According to the sources, specifically a Sahih Muslim hadith, the actions of Shaitan are absolutely not random. The text explicitly states that Iblis places his throne upon water, and from there he sends out his armies. The closest generals to him are the ones who create the greatest fitna, or turmoil, among people. This brilliantly illustrates that we're dealing with highly organized, methodical missions dispatched from a central, watery command structure, all designed to create maximum disruption in human affairs.
Let's move on to Section 2, the ranks and the unseen hierarchy.
To really grasp how this operates, we need to understand the workforce running the empire. Iblis certainly doesn't do all the work himself. The unseen realm is divided into strictly defined classifications. Think of it like a corporate ladder, but for spiritual sabotage. Jinni is simply a general term. They can be good or bad. But look a level deeper. You have the Amr, which are dwellers who literally cohabitate in houses with people. Then there are Arwah, spirits that specifically interact with children. But when a jinn becomes purely wicked, they cross over into the military ranks of Shaitan. Even worse than that is a Marid. And at the absolute pinnacle, the elite generals of this empire are the Afrit. These are the strongest, most dangerous leaders who demand allegiance from earthly sorcerers.
Which leads us to Section 3, the department heads, the literal progeny of Iblis.
Just like a massive global corporation, Iblis has specific department heads who happen to be his own children, assigned to incredibly specific, mundane earthly jurisdictions. Notice how hyper-focused these targets are. We aren't talking about grand, fiery destruction here. We're talking about methodical, bureaucratic sabotage. You've got Zellenborg, whose entire job is to make a merchant lie about their goods in the market. Vestin's duty is to make your head feel incredibly heavy when you try to wake up for morning prayers. Dasim literally enters your home, eats your food, and sleeps in your bed if a specific blessing isn't said. And Mettun? His entire department is dedicated to spreading false news and rumors. It's a perfectly calibrated division of labor aimed at the microscopic control of human morality.
Now we cross over into Section 4, earthly contractors, looking at occult lodges and seer.
We're transitioning now from the unseen to the seen. Because to truly influence the material world, this empire needs human proxies acting as the literal hands of Iblis. The texts are very clear on how this transaction works. They describe sihr, or magic, not as just waving a wand or chanting a spell, but as a strict binding contractual agreement. A human sorcerer must commit an act of profound rebellion or polytheism. In return, the unseen hierarchy provides assistance. It is a literal trading of human submission for unseen demonic power. And this contract goes incredibly deep into esoteric traditions. The source texts detail complex occult systems, mapping out structures like the Qliphothic tree of knowledge and death. These systems track the descent of the unenlightened ego. The texts describe astrological serpent angels known as Ephraim and demonic hyperspheres, which human contractors allegedly use to draw negative, vampiric currents. It's a highly systematized mechanism designed to pull destructive energy from the unseen straight into the material plane.
Furthermore, these esoteric and conspiratorial texts suggest that these earthly contractors don't just sit in dark, hidden rooms. They sit in actual seats of power. The sources impartially describe a brotherhood of shadow governance, elite occult lodges that allegedly use these exact metaphysical systems to direct worldly affairs. Through periodic rituals, economic leverage, and the immense weapon of media manipulation, these human proxies supposedly work to prime humanity for total submission.
All of this preparation brings us to Section 5, the Endgame Project, the ultimate deception known as the Dajjal. So, what is all this for? The Watery Command Center, the Whispering Department Heads, the occult proxies, the shadow governments? It's all merely groundwork for the ultimate climax described in the sources, the Dajjal. The texts describe the Dajjal as an entity wielding extraordinary, centralized worldly and political power. It represents a purely materialist force that actively denies the divine. The Dajjal acts as the absolute pinnacle of this dark organizational chart, stepping out from the unseen to utilize the entire pyramid of media, magic, and political power to literally simulate godhood right here on Earth.
But here is where the Empire deploys its most terrifying emotional weapon. The source material states that they will come in the form of dead fathers, mothers, friends, and loved ones. The text claims that Dajjal will use those specific disguised shayateen, the foot soldiers we discussed earlier, to perfectly mimic deceased loved ones. Just imagine someone you deeply mourn knocking on your door, looking and sounding exactly as you remember them, emotionally manipulating you to sell the ultimate psychological deception that this false ruler is in fact God. It is the absolute weaponization of human grief.
And that brings us to our final thought. Over the course of this explainer, we've traced a line from an ancient rebellion before humanity all the way down to the whisper that makes you hit snooze in the morning, right up to the shadow structures governing global events. I want to leave you to reflect on this vast, invisible architecture the sources claim is constantly at work around us. If an unseen empire is meticulously structured to shape our choices, our societies, and our ultimate beliefs, who is truly pulling the strings of your reality?